Welcome back to A Year of Final Fantasy, and today we're going to be looking at one of the games that I believe deserves much more attention than it's ever gotten. That is obviously, if you've clicked on the title, you know that it's Final Fantasy Type-0. Now, Final Fantasy Type-0 is part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis project that we're doing here in the month of January 2018. The Final Fantasy Type-0 was originally developed for the PSP and was released in Japan on October 27th of 2011. But I'm sure if you're watching this video, most of you are probably more familiar with the HD remaster of Type-0. Type-0 was released on the PS4, Xbox One in March of 2015. In fact, middle of March, within a few days of one another, around the 14th through the 17th, in whatever particular console that you're looking at. And it was actually also released on the Windows platform for Steam on August 18th, 2015. As such, most of this video is going to be coming from my PlayStation 4 viewpoint on the game. However, it is important to note that the PSP version originally released did have a multiplayer aspect that was not carried over to the HD remake. However, the HD remake does have higher difficulty levels and more content like that to keep the game longevity. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Whether it's good or bad is up to you. Final Fantasy Type-0 is an action role-playing game that is certainly not turn-based. It takes place in the world known as Orience, who we've talked about if you've seen my Agito video, whose land is divided into 4 crystal states. Think of them as nations, for instance. Each are based on what is known as the 4 signs in Chinese mythology. We have the Dominion of Rubrum, who uses the Vermilion Bird, which controls magic. We have the Milites Empire, who controls the White Tiger, professing knowledge of science and weapons. We have the Kingdom of Concordia, who is of the Azure Dragon, who, well, they have the power of dragons, and the Lorican Alliance is of the Black Tortoise, containing the power of shielding. And throughout the nations, each contains an academy known as a peristilium. Just think of it as a big college, who studies the crystals of their country and they protect them while, pushing forward the advancements of war and progress to take over the other nations. The crystal, much as we see during these Fabula Nova Crystallis games, has the ability to mark people as they see fit and give them a mission to focus completely on the crystal's intent. These are called l'Cie, and they're given long life and the ability to become effectively eternal, assuming they do their focus. l'Cie are a curse, however, should they not finish their focus in a timely manner or just flat out, ignore it altogether, they're going to turn into monsters who are known as the Seath. Either way, Crystal, Seath, whatever, all l'Cie are cursed with forgetting their memories. And in fact, that isn't just l'Cie. All the people of Orience lose their memories of the dead, focusing on the war, trying to gain dominance over their respective states. It's actually really kind of messed up whenever you play the game within that context, because it leads us to our most interesting point of Type-0, and that is Final Fantasy Type-0 is probably the bloodiest, grittiest, darkest Final Fantasy ever made. Even above the Final Fantasy Tactics games, which are war-torn, they kind of set the bar, but here this is just full-on awfulness in the best way. This is a war-torn game through and through, so much that the game has the only mature rating in the entire Final Fantasy series. Let that sink in. This is the only game ever in the 30 years of Final Fantasy games to receive that, coveted, I guess if you want to call it that, M rating. That's crazy to me, and it's really clear from the beginning exactly why it got this score. Anyway, during this war-filled extravaganza, you're going to be spending your time with Class 0 of the Vermilion Peristilium. You're going to have a wide variety of characters to choose from. They're kind of all given to you at the very beginning, and in fact there are 14 of them. Each of them have their own particular, let's just say, flavor and personality based on actually a deck of cards, which I think is really neat. So we have Ace, the card wielder. We have Deuce, the flute wielder. It's kind of weird, but we have Trey, the archer. There's Cater, the magic gun extraordinaire. We have the mace wielding Sync. We have Sice, who's the scythe wielder. We have the chain whip master known as Seven. Kind of, not very informative there, but we have the martial artist known as 8. 9 is a spearman, much like a dragoon. Jack masters the katana. Queen is the best swordsman of them all. And we have King, who's a dual-wielding gunslinger. And we also have a few more characters that don't necessarily quite fit in with that particular bunch. We have Makana Kunigiri and Rem, who are the narrators for the game, and they're a fairly important point to a large subplot within this game. I really like all the characters here, and all of them really do have their own distinct style and way that they carry themselves and talk. Of course, I don't really get much into plot in these particular videos, but what I've already described is basically the most that you need to know, and that's just that it's a very, very war-centric game, very bloody game. I cannot emphasize that enough. This Final Fantasy, I think, is one of the only one with blood, or at least as much gratuitous blood as it shows us. So the game is actually focused around this war, and you're going to be getting mission-styled quests that you get, as you play the game. This is kind of what makes it feel like it is a port of a mobile game, because clearly these missions allow you to just sit back for like, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes, go through a mission, and then you're done. You can save and continue. But that's not necessarily a knock against it. It's just the way that they had to make the game, being that it was on PSP originally. There are actually a few different endings of the game depending on things that you may want to try, so it really gives it a little bit of replayability in that respect. It's very cool. All that being said, I love this game, and I'm so happy it got the HD treatment, because initially we weren't going to get this at all. It was not going to be seen in the West, but for whatever reason, whatever means, they decided to give us a proper console treatment. And while this game obviously still feels as if it were made for a portable system, because it was, that doesn't really take away much of what the game did and how it chose to present this particular world of Final Fantasy. And it ultimately accomplished that very, very well in the end. And it's a really just, I've said it a million times, it's such an intense, dark war game that we don't see in Final Fantasy very often. So if you haven't played it, definitely go check it out. Hopefully, if you watch this, you'll take the plunge and get to experience this very, very unique Final Fantasy game. So that's all for this episode. Next time we're going to be going over Versus 13, which should be an interesting time indeed. It's probably not going to be that long of a video because, as hopefully you all know, Final Fantasy Versus 13 turned into Final Fantasy 15, so the main chunk will be later on in March, but we can at least see where Versus 13 started. So, as always, until next time, Crystal Warriors, keep on gaming.